Hello, and welcome to the No Wrong Notes podcast, a show hosted by me, Veronica Kokis, holistic voice teacher and singer just like you. Grab a cup of tea, relax, and sit back as we discuss all things singing technique, mindset tips, and more so you can show up as the most confident and creative singer you can be. Hey y'all, and welcome to another episode of No Wrong Notes. This episode is a special Halloween episode, since I believe this is even coming out on Halloween. I think that's when it's going to be scheduled. Anyone that knows me can tell you I'm a huge fan of Halloween, which is why I wanted to do a special spooky episode. I love all things spooky, spooky history, spooky books, horror movies. In fact, I just watched Long Legs this past weekend, so scary. That movie was very scary. Highly recommend to those of you that love scary movies too. I also love dressing up for Halloween, and actually I'm not going to be dressing up for Halloween this year, which is super sad. The past couple weeks have been so busy, you guys, with so many social things going on, family stuff going on, that I am just pooped. No bandwidth to come up with a good Halloween costume. So I think that my Halloween plans will probably just be ordering Thai food, staying in, and watching scary movies. But anyway, like I said, anyone can tell you I'm a huge Halloween fan, and I wanted to do a special episode for the holiday. And I was initially going to share some listener-submitted scary stories, but I had a better idea instead. After thinking about the requests that I made of you guys for you to share your singing horror stories, I figured that, you know what would be better? If I gave you guys ideas for how to actually navigate your worst singing fears and embarrassing moments while keeping it cool. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, because I figured, that'd be probably a lot more useful than just hearing me share a bunch of, embarrassing singing moments. But before we dive in, I do want to be clear that while it's okay to be mortified or embarrassed if these things that I'm about to talk about happen to you, I think it would be really cool to reduce the stigma and embarrassment associated with these kinds of situations. For example, people sometimes get laughed at or made fun of, especially online, for cracking on a high note or forgetting a song lyric, when these types of situations are just human error. Yes, sometimes you can't help but laugh a bit at someone making a funny sound while singing. Funny sounds can sound funny, but poking fun at or making nasty comments towards someone for the way that they sing only perpetuates the idea that vocal errors and mistakes are things to be ashamed of. They're not, and let's not feed into that narrative. Vocal mistakes, voice cracks, and errors are just part of being human. Anyone, including myself, is capable of making them. In fact, I do make them sometimes. We all make them. They happen. It's a fact of being a singer and making weird sounds sometimes. It is okay to feel scared while acknowledging that these anxiety-inducing singing fears are often just part of being human. Like I said, we're human. We all make funny sounds. Weird things happen sometimes. And we should embrace these kinds of moments. Anyways, let's move on to 3 nightmare singing scenarios and things you can do if you find yourself in one of these situations. Now, the first nightmare scenario I could think of actually happened to me last Halloween at a Halloween party, and is a pretty common thing to happen. I feel like it happens to every singer at some point. We were at a friend's house for this Halloween party, and not gonna lie, I had a bit to drink, and we were about to start singing karaoke. Of course, with the liquid courage that I had, I was gonna try Olivia Rodrigo's Driver's License, even though I, A, had some alcoholic beverages in my system. Poor judgment might have been at play. B, I was tired since this was late at night, and C, I hadn't warmed up, which, you may not always need to warm up. I mean, if you're out having fun with your friends, you may not have time to do some lip trills, but anyway, just to get across the point that my voice was not warmed up. So I went into it and went full blast belting, y'all, like 110% effort level, which, as any of my students can tell you, I mean, 110% effort level, if you're taking that into your belt, things are bound to happen. Things are gonna happen. And when I went full blast belting into this song, you guys, it was something, let me tell you. And of course, as I tell my students, we don't need a lot of air pressure to belt. You don't need a lot of air pressure, or you certainly don't need to push to belt, which is exactly what I was doing in this situation. And if you're pushing air out or squeezing air out, as I was on this fine Halloween evening, you're bound to crack, which I did. I didn't crack once, but I cracked twice. Like, what? I for sure made it clear that I was a voice teacher and that I was a singer. Anyway, and I'd sung this song hundreds of times, like for real. I've sung this song so many times. I've had so much fun with it. And that was probably what had me believing that I could sing it after a few alcoholic beverages. I'd sung this song so many times with 0 cracks. They didn't happen because probably when I'm sober and singing this song, I understand that, hey, you can't yell, you can't scream, you can't push for these high notes. Anyway, I was so embarrassed when this happened, but let me tell you what I didn't do. I didn't clam up and stop singing. I didn't just give up. I just kept rolling with it. I just kept singing and having a good time, because that's really what it's all about when you get into these sorts of situations. If you're at karaoke, if you're out partying with friends and singing along and something like that happens, which it might happen, you just keep rolling with it. There's no need to make it awkward and make it a weird moment. And when I finished the song, no one said, "Boo, you suck." They just said, "Yeah, let's go." Because of course it was a Halloween party and people weren't there to judge my singing. This is not, American Idol, X Factor, though I don't know if people still watch those shows. But hey, even if your voice cracks in a more serious situation, like a performance, like you're on stage, roll with it. Same thing applies. Keep going. It might feel like the end of the world, especially if you're not sure what the cause of the problem is. But keep going and perhaps dial it back on the volume or the breath energy that you're giving. Remember that voice cracks happen to pretty much everyone at some point or another. I know that some of y'all listening out there are just perfect little angels whose voices never crack, and that is beautiful. But for the other 99% of us humans, voice cracks happen, whether in practice or performance, and it's okay if it happens. You keep going. Try to make notes of what the crack felt like, just noticing, hey, oh yeah, that was happening in the lead up to the note. So that way you can iron out the issues during your practice or with a voice teacher and then move on with it. It's not the end of the world. After all, voice cracks show up for a reason. They're like little red flags saying, hey, something's going on and maybe we should check it out. Or, hey, Veronica, maybe you shouldn't have a bunch of drinks and pretend like you can just go right into karaoke. Anyway, they can show up because of what's happening with your singing technique, or they can even show up because your voice is fatigued. There's a lot of reasons for them, and I encourage you to think of them more as a signal that something needs your attention rather than something to fear. So that is situation numero uno. Moving on to number 2. Let's say you forget the lyrics to your song. You forget the lyrics to your song. You're on stage singing, or maybe you're at karaoke night. You forget the lyrics to the song, even though, with karaoke, the lyrics are there. I mean, it happens. So you forgot the lyrics to your song. I'm going to share a story that one of my former teachers told me from when they forgot the lyrics to a famous aria from an opera, just to kind of illustrate, yeah, this happens and this is what you can do about it. So my teacher, this was a long time ago, he was in this opera and he walks on stage for his big entrance singing his aria or whatever. I forget what show it was, but he steps on stage to sing this very famous aria. I remember that he made that clear, was that it was this aria that literally most classical music folks, or people that go to operas regularly, that they know pretty well. So it's a really well-known song from this opera, and he steps on stage and he literally just blanks on all of the lyrics, on all of the text, just completely goes out of his mind, and he's like, oh, okay. And I think whatever aria it was, the title of the aria or the song was in the lyrics. So within the lyrics, he was singing the title of the song, and that's like part of the lyrics. And so he just started singing the title of the aria over and over and over again with the melody of the song. So there were no other lyrics that he was singing. He got on stage, he blinked, and he just started singing the title of the song over and over and over again for the entirety of the aria for the song. So this is an example of, if you forget the lyrics to your song, one example is you can make up the lyrics. You can make up the lyrics if you forget them. Who cares if they are nonsense? And yeah, maybe your audience might pick up on that they're nonsense. But hey, we're all just here to sing and have fun, right? We're here to have a good time. We're here to enjoy this music. And, chances are, especially if you're singing in like a foreign language or singing something classical or singing in an opera, chances are your audience really won't pick up on that. Who knows, maybe a small percentage will, but that's besides the point. You can make up the lyrics if you forget them. And the truth is that you're bound to forget lyrics at some point. Sometimes it just happens. Again, the big overarching theme today with the last situation I mentioned, cracking on a high note, and this one, forgetting the lyrics, the big overarching message here is to roll with it. There is no ensuring that you'll never forget lyrics, but remember that the time that you put into practicing your music is what you get out of it. When you drill your song lyrics and practice them over and over again, you're building neural pathways in your brain so that you can recall those lyrics later when you get into stressful situations. And like I said, there's no ensuring that you'll never forget lyrics. It's okay to feel embarrassed. But again, it doesn't say anything about your worth as a singer. That's something to remember when it comes to any sort of stressful or potentially embarrassing situation, is that none of that says anything about your worth as a singer. Take these moments as opportunities to learn and try to do better next time if you can. Now, moving on to our third nightmare singing scenario. Let's say you're performing on stage and you can't hear yourself singing because there's no monitor and the band you're playing with is too loud. So you're singing on stage and you can't really hear yourself. You don't really know if you're taking what you did in the practice room or whatever space you practice in. You're not sure if you're able to take that into the performance. You're not sure if you're doing that in the performance because you can't hear yourself. And, this seems to be a really common occurrence for my students lately. I've had maybe like 2 or 3 at least mention that this is something that they experience within the last 2 months or so. And I've had a few students complaining of this happening at open mics here locally in Richmond. Truthfully, not every, actually maybe most places are going to have the best audio setup, especially if you're at an open mic or if it's something really casual, you're singing in a bar or something. Not every place is going to have the best audio setup, and they're not going to have the industry's top audio engineers, and that's okay. And just like the previous 2 nightmare scenarios, if this happens to you, if you're singing on stage and you can't hear yourself, you roll with it. Because the most important thing is to not over sing. And this is where the importance of practicing comes in. When you're getting ready for a performance, practice as if you're on stage. If you've got a microphone or karaoke machine at home, awesome, even better. But if not, that's okay too. The important part is to practice how you'd perform and to commit the physical sensations of your practice to memory. Notice how loud you're singing when practicing alone. Is it 100% of your total volume, 90%, 80%, 50%? Remember, if you're someone that doesn't practice with a microphone, When you sing with a microphone, you really don't need to be singing at 100%. Unless you're ripping it up with some Whitney Houston and need to pull the mic away from you to belt those high notes. If you're singing something that's mid-range and doesn't involve a ton of belting, you can usually keep your effort to speech level volume. Anyway, back to my main point. Practice at the volume that you'd perform at. Probably around speech volume with the exception of when you need to belt. And don't go further than that when you sing on stage with the mic. Like I said, don't oversing. Yes, if you're belting, you'll probably want to pull away from the mic a little bit, but you certainly don't want to give 100 times more effort than what you practice with. And if you can't hear yourself, I'm sorry, friend, but let the audio guys figure their stuff out. If they deem that you're not loud enough, that is their problem, not yours. If you're all up on the mic and they're like, we can't hear you, then that's their issue. They need to fix that. Just don't overcompensate because you can't hear yourself. And as a side note, I know I said earlier that practicing with a microphone is not totally necessary if you don't have one. But it is something that I highly recommend getting, especially if you are someone who really does want to perform a lot, either at open mics or other venues. Just because practicing with a microphone, you get used to setting up your instrument, setting up your voice in relation to your microphone. You get used to saying, okay, this is where I need to be for this part of the song. This is where I need to be for this part of the song. How far away from the mic that I need to be. Which most of the time you don't need to be super far away from the microphone. I feel like most people have the issue where they don't know how to use a microphone and they end up holding it a lot further away than they need to. So I know I said that if you don't have a microphone to practice with, that's okay. But like I said, if you are someone who wants to perform a lot, wants to perform locally or at open mics, maybe invest in a microphone and like a small little amp or something, or a little Bluetooth speaker that you can practice with. So that way you get used to singing on a microphone. All right. So those are our 3 nightmare singing scenarios and what to do if you find yourself in one of these anxiety-inducing moments. When it comes to my final thoughts on this episode, with any of these situations, it's all about going with the flow, accepting what happens, and making notes on any mistakes for your next singing practice session. Mistakes aren't things to be ashamed about. And as I said before, even though these are, quote, nightmare scenarios, it's certainly worth destigmatizing them when we encounter them ourselves or see someone else experiencing them. All right, friends, if you liked this episode, I would love it if you could leave a 5-star rating and review. If you want to work with me this fall, I've got my Curious Singer membership. You can check that out. Really exciting stuff. As always, if you want to see or hear or watch more content from me, you can follow me on social media. The handles for those are in the show description. And in the meantime, happy singing, y'all.